The world is quietly stumbling into a new and more dangerous nuclear era, one that feels both eerily familiar and entirely unprecedented. As the sun rises over silent cities and the halls of global power, a sense of unease lingers in the air. The international order that once seemed stable is now showing deep cracks, and the threat of nuclear conflict is no longer a distant memory, but a growing possibility. Around the globe, nations are testing missiles, modernizing arsenals, and redrawing the boundaries of what was once considered unthinkable. The specter of nuclear weapons, which haunted the 20th century, is returning with new urgency and complexity. For decades, a fragile system of alliances and treaties kept the nuclear threat in check. Agreements like the Non-Proliferation Treaty and arms reduction deals between superpowers created a sense of predictability even in times of tension. Diplomacy, negotiation, and mutual understanding were the tools that helped the world avoid catastrophe. Now, that system is unraveling. Treaties are being abandoned or ignored, and trust between nations is eroding. The rules that once governed nuclear behavior are being rewritten, or simply cast aside. Experts call this the third nuclear age, marked by multipolar competition, eroding rules, and more countries eyeing nuclear weapons for survival. Unlike the bipolar standoff of the Cold War, today's world is shaped by unpredictable rivalries and shifting alliances. The nuclear club is expanding and the risks are multiplying. The certainties of the post-Cold War world have vanished, replaced by rising powers and resurgent nationalism. Old assumptions about deterrence and stability no longer hold. National pride and political ambition are fueling a new arms race as countries seek to assert themselves on the global stage. Where leaders once spoke of disarmament, we now hear open threats and speculation about new nuclear states. The language of peace has given way to warnings and ultimatums, as the world edges closer to a new era of uncertainty. At the heart of this shift is a fundamental change in U.S. posture, driven by Donald Trump's policies and rhetoric. His approach to nuclear weapons, marked by unpredictability and a willingness to challenge old norms, has sent shockwaves through the international system, prompting allies and adversaries alike to rethink their own strategies. To understand this new age, we must first look at the world that came before, and how it's been upended. Only by examining the past can we grasp the full magnitude of the changes now unfolding, and the dangers that lie ahead. To truly grasp today's nuclear dangers, we need to look back at the origins and evolution of nuclear weapons. The story of nuclear arms is not just about technology or military might, it's about the choices humanity has made, the fears we've faced, and the hopes we've held for a safer world. Our journey begins in the 1940s, when the world's brightest minds gathered in secret to unlock the power of the atom. The Manhattan Project's success changed history overnight, unleashing a force that could end wars, or end civilization itself. The first nuclear age began in 1945, marked by the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Soon after, a tense standoff emerged between the United States and the Soviet Union. This era was defined by the doctrine of mutually assured destruction, where both superpowers amassed vast arsenals, knowing that any nuclear exchange would be catastrophic for all. This grim balance of terror paradoxically created a tense but stable peace. Both sides avoided direct conflict, instead engaging in proxy wars and a relentless arms race. Yet, they also recognized the need for restraint, leading to historic arms control agreements that sought to limit the risk of annihilation. The end of the Cold War ushered in what many called the second nuclear age. With the Soviet Union's collapse, the United States emerged as the world's sole superpower. The focus shifted from rivalry to preventing the spread of nuclear weapons to new states and rogue actors. Treaties like START and other landmark agreements slashed nuclear arsenals, reducing the immediate threat of global destruction. Diplomacy and verification became the tools of peace, as former adversaries worked together to dismantle thousands of warheads. America's nuclear umbrella reassured allies like Japan and Germany, deterring them from seeking their own nuclear arms. This system of extended deterrence helped contain proliferation, keeping the number of nuclear-armed states relatively low for decades. International inspectors and non-proliferation treaties worked to keep the nuclear club exclusive, and for a time, the world seemed to be moving toward a safer, less nuclear future. The optimism of the 1990s was palpable. Many believed that the nuclear threat was fading and that disarmament was within reach. But history had other plans. In recent years, the rise of China as a major military power and a resurgent assertive Russia have shattered the old order. Arms control agreements are unraveling and new technologies are making the nuclear landscape even more complex and unpredictable. Today we find ourselves entering a third nuclear age, one that is multipolar, unstable, and more dangerous than ever before. The world must now confront new risks, new rivalries, and the urgent need for fresh solutions to prevent catastrophe. No figure has shaped this new era more than Donald Trump. His America First policy upended decades of U.S. strategy, treating alliances as burdens rather than assets. Trump openly questioned the U.S. nuclear umbrella, suggesting allies like Japan and South Korea might need their own bombs. This rhetoric shattered trust and signaled that American protection was no longer guaranteed. Trump's administration withdrew from key arms control agreements, including the INF Treaty and the Iran nuclear deal. These moves weakened global norms and encouraged nations to prioritize self-defense. The message was clear: the old rules are gone, and every nation is on its own. Allies now face hard questions about their security in a world without reliable guarantees. The shift in U.S. policy has triggered anxiety and a scramble for alternatives among allies. In Europe, doubts about American resolve have revived debates over national nuclear weapons, even in Germany and Poland. The UK and France are exploring a European deterrent, but unity is elusive. In Asia, South Korea and Japan face threats from North Korea and China, and public support for indigenous nuclear arms is rising. Leaders must weigh the security benefits against the diplomatic and economic fallout of breaking the non-proliferation taboo. Ironically, America's retreat is making the world more dangerous, not less. New nuclear states would likely trigger regional arms races and instability. The policy meant to put America first could ultimately make everyone less safe. The collapse of arms control is one of the most alarming features of this new nuclear age. Treaties like New START provided transparency and limits, but now even these are expiring with no replacements in sight. For the first time since 1972, there may soon be no legal limits on U.S. and Russian arsenals. Without inspections and data exchanges, mistrust and paranoia will grow. Military planners will assume the worst, fueling arms races and increasing the risk of escalation. Russia is using nuclear threats to support aggression, while China expands its arsenal unchecked. The absence of rules benefits those seeking to challenge the order. The world is shifting from managed tension to a nuclear free-for-all. The end of bilateral arms control is made more dangerous by China's rise as a nuclear power. China is rapidly expanding its arsenal, moving toward parity with the US and Russia. This creates a three-way arms race with no historical precedent or clear path to stability. Each power's buildup is seen as a threat by the others, fueling a spiraling cycle of escalation. The US now faces the challenge of deterring both Russia and China at once. Russia, meanwhile, brandishes its arsenal to intimidate NATO and lower the threshold for nuclear use. China and Russia are using nuclear power to enable conventional aggression, while the US struggles to adapt. The world is entering uncharted and unstable territory. The erosion of U.S. security guarantees and arms control has made nuclear proliferation a real threat among established allies. Countries like South Korea and Poland are openly debating whether to pursue their own nuclear weapons. In South Korea, public support for a bomb is now mainstream, driven by fear and uncertainty. Yet the path to nuclear weapons is fraught with risks, sanctions, isolation, and regional backlash. The Non-Proliferation Treaty still carries weight, but its deterrent power is fading. If one major ally crosses the nuclear threshold, others may quickly follow. A cascade of new nuclear states could make the world vastly more unstable. The nightmare scenario, a world with not 9 but 15 or 20 nuclear powers. New technologies are making the third nuclear age even more unpredictable. Cyber weapons, AI, and hypersonic missiles blur the line between conventional and nuclear conflict and compress decision times. Cyber attacks could spoof warnings or disable nuclear forces, creating pressure to launch before it's too late. AI in military systems raises the risk of errors or automated escalation. Hypersonic missiles give leaders minutes, not hours, to decide. The old models of deterrence assumed time for deliberation. Now, a crisis could escalate in moments. These technologies demand new rules and transparency, but those are disappearing. The risk of catastrophic miscalculation has never been higher. The world stands at a crossroads, facing a nuclear landscape more perilous than ever before. The stakes have never been higher, and the decisions made in the coming years will echo for generations. We are living through a time of profound uncertainty, where old certainties have faded and new dangers are emerging at a rapid pace. The Trump era accelerated the shift to a chaotic third nuclear age, multipolar, unstable, and full of new threats. The world order that once kept nuclear ambitions in check has fractured, and the rules that govern nuclear restraint are being rewritten or ignored altogether. Rivalries have sharpened, and the risk of miscalculation has grown. The path forward is dangerous but not inevitable. We are not powerless in the face of these challenges. History shows that even in the darkest times, wise choices and determined action can change the course of events. The future remains unwritten, and the decisions we make now will shape the world our children inherit. The U.S. must reaffirm its security guarantees and rebuild trust with allies to stem proliferation. Only by restoring confidence in collective security can we hope to prevent a new arms race. This means not just words but concrete actions, renewed commitments, stronger alliances, and a willingness to lead by example. A new arms control framework is urgently needed, one that includes China and addresses new technologies. The old treaties are no longer enough. We must confront the challenges posed by cyber warfare, hypersonic missiles, and artificial intelligence, and bring all major powers to the table to forge agreements that reflect today's realities. This will require bold leadership, creative diplomacy, and a recognition of our shared vulnerability. No nation can secure its future alone. The dangers we face are global, and so too must be our response. It is a test of vision, courage, and the ability to see beyond narrow self-interest. The lesson of the first nuclear age is clear. Even bitter rivals can cooperate to avoid mutual destruction. The Cold War showed us that dialogue, negotiation, and compromise are not signs of weakness, but of wisdom and strength. We must draw inspiration from those who came before us and dared to imagine a safer world. We must relearn that lesson, fast. The clock is ticking, and the margin for error is shrinking. Education, public awareness, and a renewed commitment to diplomacy are more important than ever. The choices made now will determine whether we step back from the brink or tumble into disaster. The world is watching, and the responsibility rests with all of us to choose wisely, act boldly, and secure a future free from the shadow of nuclear catastrophe.